The night he dismissed widows as baggage was the same night his life cracked open like a fragile shell, spilling truths he had spent years outrunning. Rain slicked the city streets into mirrors of trembling light, and the restaurant's windows glowed warm against the cold, but inside him there was a frost that had settled long ago. He believed love was a clean equation, grief a mess that belonged to other people, and second chances an indulgence he didn't owe anyone. He arrived confident, certain that the evening would confirm what he already knew about the world and the careful distance he kept from it. Within hours, that certainty would dissolve, replaced by a lesson so quiet and so devastating that it would follow him for the rest of his days. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to change a life, take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us what it means to be human. His name was Adrian Cole, a name that suited the polished edges of his life. At 38, he had built a reputation on predictability, earning promotions through discipline and a refusal to complicate things. His apartment was minimalist, his calendar color-coded, his emotions managed like risk. He told himself this control was strength, the result of learning early that love could vanish without warning. Years before, his mother's long illness had taught him the price of attachment, and when she died, he decided grief was a debt he would never again allow himself to incur. Dating, to Adrian, was a checklist of compatibility that left no room for the shadows of the past. He wanted someone unburdened, someone whose story began where his did, not someone carrying the weight of a life already lived and lost. Across the table sat Mara. She wore a simple dress, her hands folded as if protecting something invisible. Her eyes held a calm that did not beg for approval, and there was a softness to her presence that filled the space without demanding it. Adrian noticed the faint silver at her temples, the kind that came not from age but from weathering storms. He learned early in the evening that she was a widow, and the word landed between them like a dropped plate. He reacted with a practiced politeness that thinly veiled his discomfort, and in his mind he categorized her story as incompatible. He believed that widows carried ghosts, that every smile was haunted, that any future would always be compared to a past he could never compete with. He told himself he was being honest, even noble, by drawing a boundary before anything could deepen. Mara did not argue or shrink. She listened, and something in her gaze shifted, not with anger but with a quiet understanding that unsettled him. She shared little about her loss, only that love had once been deep and ordinary, and that grief had taught her patience. Adrian felt a strange pressure in his chest, as if the room had lost air. He pushed the feeling away, paid the bill, and suggested they end the evening early. Outside, the rain had grown heavier, and as they stepped onto the sidewalk, a sudden screech of tires cut through the night. A car hydroplaned, skidding into a light pole with a violent crack that echoed down the block. Time fractured. Adrian's body moved before his mind could assemble fear, and he ran toward the wreck. The driver was trapped, bleeding, his breath shallow. Bystanders froze, phones raised, unsure. Mara was already kneeling, her coat soaked, her hands steady, as she assessed the man's injuries with an instinct that spoke of experience. She guided Adrian to help, directing him to apply pressure, to keep the man conscious, to speak softly. Sirens wailed in the distance, but in that pocket of chaos, Mara was calm, compassionate, and fiercely present. Adrian felt his heart pounding not with panic but with awe. He realized he was watching someone who had been forged by loss into something stronger, not broken. When the ambulance arrived and the driver was lifted away, Mara sat back on her heels, exhaustion washing over her face. Rain streaked down her hair, and for the first time Adrian saw the cost of her composure. It was not emptiness, but endurance. She had loved deeply and survived the aftermath, and instead of retreating from the world, she had leaned into it, ready to help a stranger in the worst moment of his life. Adrian stood there, soaked and shaken, his earlier judgments echoing in his ears like a cruel joke. The lesson was not shouted, it seeped in slowly, undeniable. They parted that night without promises. Adrian walked home alone, the city quieter now, his thoughts louder than the rain. Sleep eluded him as memories resurfaced, especially of his mother's final days when neighbors had brought meals and held his hand, when compassion had been the only thing that made the pain bearable. He recognized the hypocrisy of his fear. He had closed himself off not because grief was messy, but because it was real, and real things demanded courage. In the days that followed, he found himself replaying the scene by the accident, the way Mara had stepped forward while others hesitated. He began to question the stories he told himself about safety and control. Adrian reached out again, not with excuses, but with humility. He listened this time. He learned about Mara's late husband, not as a rival, but as a chapter that had shaped her. He learned about the nights she spent relearning how to breathe, the mornings she chose hope even when it hurt, the small rituals that kept her grounded. She spoke of grief not as a prison, but as a river you learn to cross, again and again, until the current no longer knocks you down. Adrian felt his own walls soften. He realized that avoiding pain had also meant avoiding depth, and that love without risk was not love at all. Their connection grew quietly, built on shared walks, honest conversations, and the understanding that the past does not vanish but can coexist with the present. Adrian faced his fears head-on, allowing himself to feel, to remember his mother without flinching, to accept that loss was not a mark of weakness but proof of having loved. Mara did not ask him to replace anyone. She invited him to stand beside her, to build something new with the wisdom of what had been. In her presence, Adrian learned that second chances are not about erasing history but honoring it while choosing to move forward. Months later, Adrian found himself volunteering at a roadside assistance program on rainy nights, drawn back to the moment that changed him. He saw in others the same hesitation he once had, and he stepped forward anyway. Compassion became a habit, then a value. He no longer flinched at the word widow or the weight it carried. Instead, he saw resilience, depth, and the quiet bravery of continuing to love after loss. The lesson life taught him was not delivered with cruelty, but with grace, and it reshaped him more thoroughly than any success ever had. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can arrive in the most unexpected moments and that love is stronger than fear, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel so these stories can reach more hearts. Before we reach the end, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with the word compassion if you believe that understanding and empathy can change lives, and share your own thoughts or experiences if you feel comfortable. Adrian and Mara never pretended the road ahead would be easy. They chose honesty over comfort, presence over avoidance, and in doing so, they found a love that was not fragile but resilient. The night that began with judgment ended with awakening, and the man who once believed grief was a liability learned that it was also a teacher. Life did not scold him. It showed him, gently and unmistakably, that hearts are not meant to be kept pristine. They are meant to be lived in, scarred, and opened again. And in that opening, he discovered the most profound truth of all, that love, in all its forms, is worth the risk every single time.